Hi, and welcome to Solitude with Soleil, where I share my thoughts with you in solitude. Welcome back. Welcome back. I have made a few podcasts. The inception of this podcast was from 2021. I found that I sent my friends a lot of voice notes. And of course, they're humans. They have their own lives, and I really didn't want to bother them as much as they reassured me that I wasn't. And so I started to make podcasts basically to myself, pretending I was sending a voice note to someone. And I thought, why not put that in the form of a podcast? I love sharing the knowledge I've learned through my own experiences to help to reinforce it within myself or to help someone else along our human experience who may be experiencing the same thing. See, in life, I am of the belief that whatever I'm experiencing at my corner of the world, someone else is experiencing it as well. You're never too smart, never too educated, never too aware to fall prey to these type of things, and it requires a lot of self-compassion. So just know this is a self-compassion podcast. Just know that shame keeps you hiding away from the things that you need to really evaluate to be better. But self-compassion is liberating, and it's freedom, and it gives you that freedom to really go back to the roots and to your upbringing. So I think we all go through this thing where when we're done with whether a partnership or getting to know someone, we are like, "Oh yeah, he was trash, they were trash, this that." And while their behaviors were trash indeed, it is also a moment for self-reflection on what core wounds were activated during that dynamic. There were certain things that really shifted something for you, and it is a moment to really reflect on those and really strengthen those. And one of the key things I want to talk about today are early warning signs. I think most people talk about this from the standpoint of you should have known this, you should have known that, you saw that, you went still. I think a lot of us, if we saw devil's horn or we could foresee what was going to happen, that we probably would not go into a dynamic unless we like pain or unless you want to relive some trauma in your life. But for some of us, we have learned to doubt our judgment, to doubt that gut feeling and that instinct and that intuition that is telling us that little weird, uncomfortable feeling that's telling us that something is wrong. We tend to doubt our judgment. We tend to give a person the benefit of the doubt. We tend to tell ourselves it's probably nothing and I'm probably just being too overly critical or too judgmental. But I want to say that it is better to feel like you were too critical than to have feel like you weren't critical enough or didn't trust yourself enough. And our intuition and our instinct is a gift. It is it is so unique because only we possess our own unique set of intuitiveness. Our intuition is made up of our past experiences, our values, our belief system, and just that innate feeling that we were all given. So even if toward the end you're explaining to someone like, hey, I just got this feeling, and they can't see it, they're like, well, this is a nice person, they would never. Even if they can't see it, it's not their job to feel it for you, because we all have our own unique set of gut feelings that we work with. And some of the times we see the red flags, but we aren't really sure, are they red flags. That is particularly true for people who grew up in extremely volatile environments. It's where that behavior feels familiar. So you're like, is this a red flag? You feel so used to certain behaviors that it, even though it is unhealthy, it's not really screaming alarm bells for you. When in reality, it should, because it is an act of self protection, and that you are of so much value, and that you don't deserve to go through any amount of pain or mistreatment or disrespect. And really knowing what behaviors are unhealthy and also contrasting with what behaviors are healthy will help you for the future. And sometimes there are a lot of people who they are charming in the early stages, but they don't remain that way. They give you a lot of charm, and they give you a lot of gifts, and they give you a lot of attention and affection and love. And that sets the tone for what will ensue later. And then there are some times where it's a mixture. They're showing you some signs, but you are clinging to the good times. You don't want to hurt them. You feel a sense of pity or obligation to stay around with them. You think that if you talk to them a little bit more about their behavior, or if you give them another chance, or if you lecture them about it, cry to them about it, that somehow some level of empathy and awareness will be awoken within them to change. And that is a grave mistake that many of us have made. And it's something that you should forgive yourself for, and really educate yourself and equip yourself with knowledge moving forward. You know, rub yourself, go into a fetal position, hold your shoulders, and tell yourself that you acted based on the information you knew then. But how you act now is based on the information you have now. And you won't always get it perfect, because humans are multifaceted. We are not monoliths. We aren't stuck in one particular behavior. And so you could learn all the signs and you could go through all the ropes, and still something slips through the cracks. But it's so important at baseline to understand the dynamic beneath dating, particularly if you are from an environment where you experience a lot of volatility, a lot of trauma, a lot of instability. Some of these behaviors can be a little bit too familiar to you, or you spot that something is wrong, but in that dynamic, you had to just roll with the punches. You had to live through what was wrong until you reached a point of no return. And if it is that you were raised in a healthy upbringing where your boundaries were respected, where you were allowed to be your individual self, where you had rights, where you were taught confidence, how to stand up for yourself, how to love yourself on the inside, and how to not depend on external validation for how you feel or love yourself, then this podcast may not resonate well with you. I think for a lot of people, it comes naturally to them, and I don't think they have ill intent when they say to you, well, you saw those red flags, you still went, oh, you knew what you were signing up for, or like, really, you made that mistake type of a thing. But for some people, from a compassionate standpoint, it doesn't really come natural. It takes a lot of reparenting, a lot of revisiting what your boundary system was in your family system, and what relational impact this now has for your future dynamics, and really working through those. And that's why we're here today, to work through it together. And I love the standpoint that I come from, where it's not from a standpoint where I have it all figured out. We are healing together. I am in this experience with you. You know, I have recently come out of an experience where the standpoints I'll talk from are a direct reflection of that, or a direct reflection of cycles that were brought to my attention that I just wasn't really aware that I was continuing or perpetuating a cycle of what I will further discuss. So, again, it's a no judgment zone, it's compassion, and it's owning. And really, taking responsibility doesn't mean shaming yourself. It doesn't mean telling yourself, looking at yourself from the extreme, that you are such a stupid person, that you're an idiot for not seeing that. It takes looking at yourself from a nuanced middle ground. Like, I'm human, I have good qualities, but there are some areas that I've fallen a little bit short on. Why? What can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen again, or when I encounter something similar, that I'm equipped to really navigate that situation well and get out before it's too late. And I read this book by Lundy Bancroft. He has worked with thousands of unhealthy, I would say toxic, um, relationship dynamics. And so his counseling and his books are from the standpoint of dating with men. And that is the standpoint I will talk from. I will not be talking from the standpoint of red flags for women at all. So if you are looking for that, I'm not here to talk about that. Um, so he talks about what early warning signs are there that can tip you off that your partner may be exhibiting unhealthy, controlling, or further, abusive signs in the future. And he really taps into what goes on in that person's mind, because he has dealt with tens of thousands of men in all of his really decades of counseling these type of people, to have that expertise and the experiences directly from women who have heard quite literally the same things. You see, even though we are multifaceted as humans, sometimes certain things come by a certain playbook. And once you understand that playbook, you know what signs to look for. Um, so, the number one thing is that a lot of the times, too, when people hear that you're unsafe or that you don't feel quite okay around someone, their automatic reaction is to ask if you were hit. But ill treatment and unhealthy dynamics comes in the forms of so many ways. It could be emotional, it could be spiritual, financial, verbal. There are so many ways that pain can come. It could be in the form of intimidation, put downs, comparisons. It doesn't have to necessarily be that that person has hit you for you to have been deeply impacted by their actions. Whether or not they intended to, the impact is there because you felt hurt, you felt the blunt, you felt unsafe, and this is what we want to talk about. So, when you go on a date, there are certain warning signs that you could look for in the men. And it's a playbook, because after I read this book, I really, 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 really saw how the same type of behavior existed in the people I had dated. And then I realized, okay, this is also a cycle for me. So I got to writing about my previous, whether I was just talking to them, getting to know them, whether or not I just had a relationship with them. I really got to analyzing, were these signs present in these type of people? What was my thought process toward those signs? And really and truly, did I really think those were red flags? Did I think I could fix them? Did I probably ignore them? Really just revisiting my relationship with them. And that is why I really drive home the point of being compassionate to yourself, because in order to really dig deep into your patterns and dynamics and things that you can work to strengthen, you have to be compassionate to yourself. So the first time I did this, I did feel a lot of anxiety. I did feel a lot of shame. I felt a lot of guilt, humiliation, embarrassment, like, oh. But that is a beautiful sign that you are willing to take the step, that you know that something was wrong, that that isn't what you deserve. So that embarrassment, that humiliation is a direct result of you knowing that, man, I never want to feel that embarrassing feeling again. And that will also push you to ensuring for the future that you have an open mind that really analyzes things. So I'm going to go into the warning signs and the list. 14 minutes into the podcast and we're just starting, but It's really important to really listen to. So, how can you tell if someone is going to be controlling, abusive, unhealthy, toxic? So, these are warning flags that something could be down the road, perhaps not far. And I'm paraphrasing from the book Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. So, the first sign that he tells is that you will find that he speaks disrespectfully about his former partners. Believe me, I have experienced that. When that was the first thing he said, and I was like, "Oh, in the book, I mean, that was the first warning sign he gave," and I was like, "Ooh, ooh." So when you see that, your assignment is to be. What is your reaction when he speaks disrespectfully about his former partners? What do you think that says about him? What does that invoke in you? Does it invoke in you disgust? Like, this guy is like, he has nothing good to say about someone that he was with for so long. He just hates her like that. Hmm. Or does it invoke in you, well, I can fix him. I can show him that I'm not like her. And it's the reality that some of the times we operate from these standpoints because of an unmet need, because of unresolved wounds, because of unaddressed patterns. And it's really important um to address that. So he says that a certain amount of anger and resentment towards an ex is normal. He's not saying that you should he should, speak perfectly of her, particularly if the relationship ended sourly. He may still have some unresolved feelings. However, if he is extremely focused on his bitterness and he tells you about it inappropriately early on in your dating, that is a warning flag. Meaning you're on the first date with a guy and he is bitter about his ex, take up your bag, call yourself a cab, excuse yourself, and leave. Take it from me. And I got over the embarrassment and the humiliation of it so that I'm able to speak about it because it's a universal experience. There's some person on this earth who that slips under the rug for them, or because of some type of pattern from their family system or upbringing. When we see red flags, we tend to doubt our judgment, we tend to probably ignore them, or we tend to take that on as a challenge. Like, I could fix that, I could be better, or not in a way to compete, may or not be to compete, but to try to please or soothe that person's aching, but it's really not your responsibility. So if he talks about her in like a degrading or condescending way, and he goes on to say if he characterizes himself as a victim of being abused by women. So this is an expert. This guy has coached, counseled over tens of thousands of men like this. So he knows his stuff. He knows what he is saying. And he wrote this book to help women who share this universal experience. Dating is a universal experience. We all want companionship. We all want healthy love. And so I know I'm reaching to someone out there. So if he says that someone falsely accused him of being, abusive or downplays it, be very aware, because the majority of reports of, you know, these type of things are accurate. From a woman's perspective, it takes a lot for you to even come out about that. There's a lot of pushback, there's a lot of questioning from you. It's a very exposing, humiliating like type of process to do, and it takes a lot, and there's really nothing to gain from making up a lie about a man. There's really not much to gain. So when you hear that someone considers him that way, always, he says, always try to find a way to get her side of the story, particularly if his ex is the villain. Like, he has nothing good to say about her. She is the villain. Everyone hates her. He hates her. He doesn't speak of her well, years even after the dynamic has ended. Even if you don't, he says, even if you don't end up believing her, at least you know what behaviors to watch out for. Um, Also, this one hit home for another experience I had. Be cautious of the man who says that you are nothing like the other women he has been involved with. That you were the first person to treat him well, or the earlier woman in his life just didn't understand him. And that activates in you this maternal instinct of protection, of nurturing. You want to work hard to prove that you aren't like those other women. But that is a setup for a trap. You see, when someone healthily is ready to date, they have healed past their previous relationships. Their relationship focus is getting to know you as a person, getting to experience you as a person. They aren't concerned about all of these types of games. You know, he goes on in the book to say that it won't be long before he starts to tell you that you are just like the rest of them. You know, so he says that his system ensures that no woman can be a good woman while she is, involved with him. And so you keep working for this person's approval. And then you have men who have the opposite. They will glorify their partner to an extent that they're trying to make you feel inadequate or inferior or insecure or jealous, so that you feel that you could never compete to the things that they used to do. For example, he would talk about your physique in comparison to them. He could talk about your success, or talk about, some men go as far as to even talk about your sexual performance in comparison to other women, which is completely wrong and a flat out red flag. And he has to go in the trash where he belongs. And you have to take yourself up because you're of value and move away from that. So notice if he doesn't really seem to accept any responsibility for what went wrong in his previous relationships. So if everything was always the woman's fault, everything was his ex's fault, like every single thing, you know, you will soon be the person of blame for all the difficulties in the new dynamic. That was just one point. That was just one point about how he speaks disrespectfully about his former partner. What I'm going to do is, cuz we're already at like 30 minutes, I'm about to read all of the early warning signs, and then in part 2, I'm going to go about discussing them, because believe me, maybe part 2, part 3, part 4, believe me, I have a lot to say about these warning flags, and I wish I had this book sooner, but everything in due timing, because now that I've educated myself, now that I've really really affirmed what is a red flag, have my non-negotiables, that it'll be much safer to navigate when I'm ready to put myself out into the world. And also with other things that I work to strengthen, like boundary setting, standing up for yourself, knowing when to walk away, increasing your value and your worth within yourself. It'll be a walk in the park. Also, just your relationship with God and praying and allowing God to really lead and direct you. A lot of the times, like, the Holy Spirit is sending you signs, like He's giving you signs, and that is also work that you need to do to strengthen your belief system in God, firstly, before anything else, because He is omnipresent, He's omniscient, He sees everything, He knows every thought. And so, if He's granting you that opportunity to foresee what's happening, whether you get a dream, do not downplay it. Do not say to yourself that, I'm just probably too superstitious. That is a gift that you have been given, um, that has been bestowed from the one who can see it all. As well as, if you want to look at it from the psychological perspective, that our subconscious is as a result of our innermost feelings. And if you get a dream about someone and it is warning you of something, it is still a reflection of some experience you've had with them, or some feeling that you have that this has the potential to happen. Trust me, it's no coincidence. If you get a dream about someone being a particular way, it is because in your conscious aware state you get that feeling. You may be ignoring that feeling, and then it pops up in your subconscious, and you may be pushing that, and the Holy Spirit is giving you signs, and you're just like, let me just walk right over them. Take it from me. Don't do that. The next thing is, um, the next sign is he is disrespectful toward you. He favors you for what you don't want, or he does favors for you that you don't want. That is so important. Or he puts on a show of generosity that makes you uncomfortable. He is controlling. He is possessive, like jealous type of behavior. Nothing is ever his fault. He is self-centered is another. He uses drugs or alcohol. The other point is that he pressures you for sex. Really important that I want to talk about. He gets serious too quickly about the relationship. That's one of them that really slides under the rug, that people try to dress up as like a quirky trait, like someone who moves too fast. It is not a good sign. He intimidates you when he's angry. Um, Another sign is that he has double standards. He has negative attitudes towards women. He treats you differently around other people. He appears to be attracted to vulnerability. Really important. All of them are important, but some of them that I emphasize are things that I have gone through. None of these warning signs, though, he goes on to say, are the sure sign that someone is like that, with the exception of physical intimidation. Because people who aren't may exhibit some of these signs to a limited degree, but it comes on to how that person addresses the situation. As soon as you make it clear to him what behaviors are uncomfortable or acceptable to you, how does he handle it? Does he find a way to blame you for it, to make it out that you're too sensitive? For example, he makes a joke that makes you uncomfortable. Does he immediately apologize and doesn't make any excuses? Or does he say to you that, you're a little bit too sensitive, that's a joke. I do this all the time, and you've addressed the behavior once. The author goes on to say, if it happens again, stop seeing him for a good amount of time. Do not see him. And then if it happens a third time, he says, or if he switches to other behaviors, that is so important, because sometimes people have the tendency to change one behavior, and they keep you in that cycle, like, okay, yeah, they change, but then they switch to another behavior. That is another warning flag. So chances are that he has a problem, and if you give him too many chances, you're going to regret it later. Okay, so this is where I'm going to stop right now, and in the next part, I will go deep into these warning signs and share a couple of my experiences. And there are some experiences that I'm proud of, that I saw them and I got out. And then there are some experiences that I'm not proud of, that, you know, I lingered a bit too long, I accepted a bit too much, I gave too many chances, I had too much grace. So again, we're all humans and complex human beings. And so from this experience, I look at it like, how did I feel in the times when I did trust myself, when I didn't wait for something bad to happen and I just left on a whim? I didn't even consult anyone, like, hey, is this person weird or not? Or am I just tripping? No, just felt within myself, this person is weird. I get a visceral, weird feeling from them and just leave and just remove them from your orbit entirely. How did you feel? How did it feel when you had that feeling and then you ended up finding out down the line that that the feeling you had about the person was correct? And then how did you feel when you had the feeling, you ignored it, or you gave them the benefit of the doubt, and in the end, it turned out to be true? I think the one you would love the most is that feeling of, yeah, you felt a little bit too cutthroat and you felt like you were a little bit too suspicious, but you trusted your instinct, and then down the line, you saw for real why you should have. Believe me that nothing is ever a joke, nothing is ever to be slid under the rug, because people have only one shot to impress you. And what they do with the one shot they get to impress you says a lot about their value system, about their own cultural beliefs and upbringing, but also about their future pattern of respect towards you. So, see you in the next one. Thank you for joining me on Solitude with Soleil, and bye.